All right, so before we jump into today's event, I would like to introduce myself in the Alliance Center. My name is Danny Orth. I am the events director at the Alliance Center, and I just celebrated 7 years with the organization, and I am super passionate about all things events. I will also be your moderator for today's session, and I also want to introduce and thank Kelby Johnson. She's our events coordinator with the Alliance Center, as she will be helping on the back end of Zoom, putting in links in the chat, all of that good stuff. As we get started, I would like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. If you could remember to stay on mute, that would be great. We will do a Q&A portion at the end, and if you want to come off mute at that point in time, you're welcome to do that as well. If you are able to keep your video on, it's so nice to see everyone's lovely faces as we're doing the live webinar, and it's always nice for speakers to present to live faces as opposed to like black screens. And this session is going to be recorded and will be sent out after the event. All right, a little background about the Alliance Center. We are a nonprofit in Denver that exists to bring people together to solve systemic problems, especially around climate change. We convene and mobilize our network of nonprofit organizations, for-profit businesses, government agencies, academic institutions, and community members to collaboratively create sustainability-focused solutions. Best for Colorado is a program of the Alliance Center because we acknowledge that a sustainable future isn't possible without leadership and innovation from the private sector. And this is why the Best for Colorado program serves as a hub for corporate social responsibility for Colorado businesses. It allows companies to measure and improve their social and environmental impact, regardless of where they're at on their corporate social responsibility journey. I also wanted to do a quick plug for our Commit to Action campaign. The Commit to Action campaign is a free resource of suggested actions that help you implement socially and environmentally responsible business practices. You can join the campaign by committing to one or all 4 of them. It's super easy, super fast, and super free. Today's flow will be like this. We'll hear from Audrey with Team Tipton first, and then we'll hear from David Henry with Namaste Solar. We'll open it up for a group Q&A discussion, and then we will finish with just a couple more housekeeping items. I'm really excited to introduce our speakers for today, Audrey Cruz with Team Tipton and David Henry with Namaste Solar. We did an event with David and Audrey almost a year ago to the date, but that was when COVID had first hit. The conversation is going to be fun and unique, and that we're bringing both of them back to talk and reflect about, the last year of COVID and how they've continued to support their employees. David has been with Namaste Solar for over 12 years and is currently the general manager of Namaste Solar. Namaste Solar is a solar energy company that goes beyond just being a business, and David will elaborate more on that here shortly. And Audrey Cruz is also with us. She has an MBA, has a rescue pup named Xena Warrior Princess, which is amazing. She's also the senior change architect with Team Tipton, which is a change management company. And Audrey, I am going to hand things over to you.
It's true. I do have a dog named Xena Warrior Princess. She's awesome. You might hear her at some point today, in fact. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I have just a small slide deck to go through to kind of talk us through some of the concepts that I'm hoping to address today. And first, I guess I'd like to set it up with David and I had an awesome conversation last year with a number of people around really how to respond to the people side of things, how to help to support our employees, how to help people to move through and navigate this incredibly challenging time for people. And, we really were interested in kind of convening again and talking about what's happened over the course of the last year. What have we done? What's worked? What hasn't worked? What are we still kind of working through? And how are we going to navigate as we move into this next phase of what this looks like? And so we're going to talk with you today about some of the approaches that we've taken over the last year, particularly really help our employees. And then from my perspective, also our clients. So my organization, Team Tipton, we are a professional services firm. We provide consulting services around management leadership practices, particularly focused on transformational change. and strategy, and helping people to align around strategy and operationalize their strategy. So when COVID hit in the very beginning, we had to shift really drastically, really quickly, because all of our client services and all of our workshops and coaching, everything happened in person. And a lot of what we rely on is our ability to create a specific environment and a specific energy for the people that we're working with, so that they're able to step into a space of productivity and coherence that they haven't before. And so we were really shook. We didn't know how to do that in this virtual environment. We hadn't, while we as a team had been a virtual office, we'd never worked with our clients in that way. And as a professional services firm, as a consulting firm as well, consulting is often looked at as a luxury item, not as a need to have, but as a nice to have. And so we really quickly saw about 50% of our business evaporate or go on pause or go on hold in some capacity. So we had to pivot really quickly and had to step into the unknown, both for ourselves as a business and because we wanted to help our employees through this change, and other people's employees through this change, our clients, large government agencies that we work with. This is a space that we felt we could really help with. This is what we do. We do change. We help people to navigate that. And so we felt a responsibility as well, to put content out there and to start helping people to determine how best to move through this. So as I said, I have this short slide deck. And so there are 3 topics that I really like to talk about, which are what we embraced and what we moved into. And that's agility, alignment, and energy management. So agility. This was something that we recognize needs to happen immediately, because how people feel about change and the unknown and the fear that came up for them as soon as COVID kind of took hold is like we were being chased by mastodons. Our brains couldn't register the difference. We thought our lives were at risk. And for many people, they were. There was a survival component that kicked in for us. And this is a really challenging place to be in when you're trying to think high level and think in a cognitive place that's making big decisions and hard decisions and creative decisions. And so part of this was kind of recognizing what it was that we were encountering and helping our clients to recognize this. Your brain is recognizing what's occurring as fear and risk, and we have to practice to get comfortable with that and normalize that. So what we did was we really took the approach of changing how we were thinking about fear and helping to shift people's thought process around this unknown. And to do that, we embraced agile practices. So we had been kind of I guess, experimenting or exploring with Agile and Scrum before COVID hit. I actually had become a certified Scrum Master only a few weeks before Denver shut down. And so it was a strange serendipitous alignment of events. But what that allowed us to do was we had this practice, this structure, this framework that we could try utilizing in this circumstance. So we really embraced Scrum and started using Scrum internally as we were approaching different work, as we were exploring how to provide our services differently, as we were thinking about how we could serve our clients, how we could develop new products. We moved into this approach of using sprints and learning iteratively and quickly. And so the empirical process kind of underlies Agile and Scrum. And so we really embrace this 4-step process of planning, doing, inspecting, and adapting, and continually moving through this cycle of iteration so that we were able to focus on learning rather than executing. We really shifted our mindset to how can we learn as quickly as possible, what's going to provide us with transparent information, and use this model of just iteration, cyclical iteration. And the goal was always to learn more and get better as we moved. So that helped us drastically as a team. We were able to redefine the way that we delivered our services. So we went from a more traditional waterfall type of approach in our project management and the way that we were providing workshops, and moved to a sprint model with a lot of our clients. I think that they're government agencies, so quite often they're not interested in embracing change so quickly, but they were in a very difficult position as well. And for those of you that are familiar with Scrum and Agile, one of the wonderful things about it is that it minimizes the risk because it's this shorter time boxed period. And so when we first kind of let our clients know, we recognize that you don't have the money at this point to do the full consulting services. And we recognize that you're facing these incredibly challenging problems right now. Would you be willing to try a sprint to tackle the biggest, baddest problem that you're facing at this moment? And most of our clients trusted us enough and were in a situation where they needed that support that they were willing to step into that. And we saw incredible success very quickly with all of our clients. And they then had this small win under their belt and were interested in continuing that. So inadvertently, we've actually helped one of our clients go through an agile transformation, and that's now how they're doing work in their department. So Agile has been a friend to us and has been something that we've been really excited to help our clients to start to embrace, recognizing that this is not going to be the end of this type of uncertainty. In fact, this has been going on for decades, and we as work environments just haven't stepped into that quite yet. We're still often operating from a relatively antiquated place in how we manage our work, because it feels more comfortable. And we're starting to kind of step into this new space, a new way of potentially doing work. And I think people are more open to that now. So then our next kind of piece of advice or learning from all of this was around alignment. So I think that we as an organization, because we're really mission driven and we believe in what we do, we got a little bit complacent in believing our own alignment internally as well. And I think COVID really kind of brought that to the forefront of helping us to understand that there were areas we needed more alignment around, particularly around our purpose and what that looked like in the new world, how we were going to help to live our purpose and our mission. And there were different opinions about that and difficult conversations. And what we recognized is that we really needed to take a collaborative approach to this, that we needed to ensure that all voices on our team are part of this process and a part of exploring what could be possible together. So we did a couple things to really work into this. We used some tools that helped us. So Zoom became something we relied on frequently because it provided us this space where we could see everybody at one time. We could interact with each other via chat if we needed to, and we could be with each other in a way that was a little bit more present than a voice or audio call only. Being able to read people's nonverbal cues, being able to be responsive to each other, creating space. So we felt like that was a really helpful tool. And then Mural was another tool that we use. I use it multiple times a day. It's become one of my most primary workspaces. And Mural is an online whiteboard, which allows people to work both at the same time, so that everyone's actually plugging in and working simultaneously. But you can also do things that aren't synchronized. So people can go into the Mural board in different times and work on it to continue to move things forward. We used to create Post-it notes all over walls when we do brainstorming sessions. And as many of you know, with that, you lose Post-it notes, they end up in the wrong places, you have to record everything. It never quite ends up being the same way. And now we have a way of just referring back to what Post-it notes we created the last week. Everything is kind of living document that then becomes an artifact of the work that we've had together. We've used this with all of our clients as well, and they've definitely embraced it. And I think that many are interested in continuing to use it, whether they're going to remain virtual, hybrid, or going back in person, because of that artifact nature of it. It's more permanent, and you can continue to refer back to the work that you've done in the past. And then the other thing that I want to say about this is we really focused again on finding that purpose, that centralized purpose, and the priorities for how we were going to move forward, and thinking about culturally what we might need to do to shift, how we might need to change as an organization to better serve our customers. And so we've always utilized some form of agreements together to help people to kind of determine upfront how we're going to operate together, so that we're all making this agreement. We use this term instead of ground rules, because we want it to be much more about how we are deciding and collectively determining that we are going to show up and make this work happen. And so we feel that this is a more kind of inclusive approach, and less about hierarchy, more about really creating the space for good work to happen. So we adjusted them to be more aligned to the virtual environment and some of the challenges that people are facing. And so we focused on really helping to ensure that everybody's showing up with their presence, that they are investing their time, their focus, their energy, that they're mitigating distractions whenever possible, and that they're allowing people to be human. So if my child runs behind me, everybody in the room is going to recognize that I'm doing my best to balance things. That it's not because I don't respect the people in the room, but it's because I have a life and I have to try to figure out how to make this work. And so it's both doing what you can to mitigate those distractions, but also giving space and grace for people to do what they need to do without feeling guilt or shame or embarrassment about the balance that we have to have in this really challenging time period. So we really use these as anchoring points, as a way of helping to collectively bring people together and shift the energy in this space. So I also mentioned earlier that, part of what I rely on as a facilitator and a consultant is my ability to create a certain energy and space in the environment that I'm in. And so this really helped to create that space. It helped to give us this anchoring point and something to refer back to, so that people could remember how we're showing up, how we're choosing to do this work together. So the last piece I want to touch on is energy management. So my coworker and I have been joking that energy management is the new time management. And what we've recognized really through this, and I think that we had inklings of it before, but time management is just such a narrowly focused way of looking at the way that we use our time and what actually goes into the work that we do. And one of the things that became very apparent as change was occurring, and as this large change was occurring, is how much energy is utilized in novel activities, in new activities, and those that aren't routinized. And what we took for granted was the fact that we had all of these routines built into our day and how we operate that gave us anchors and opportunities to shut off our brain for a time period. When you do the same things over and over again, you create neural pathways in your brain, and your body just goes into this automated process. So we do that through the course of a day inherently. We create these different routines and anchors to help us to move through and to create space for the more creative activities, or the things that take higher levels of thinking, that we have enough energy to do those activities through the course of a day. But when we moved very quickly to a virtual environment and we're trying to determine how to make everything happen, how to make work happen, people got kind of pushed into this space of no longer having routines. All of the routines they had built were gone. So every activity that we were doing through the course of the day was taking far more energy than it had in the past. So we hit 4 o'clock and we were wiped out. It seems like they were the same activities or the same things or the same amount of time I'm at work, but I'm so exhausted. Why am I so exhausted? And it's because we were using far more energy. We're using far more energy with any of these new things that we're doing. And I also want to bring this up because that we're about to go through another transition. And I think that a lot of organizations and a lot of leaders think that we're just going back to where we were before and that everybody's just going to be able to slide back in. But even if they're going to have the exact same routines they had before, it's different from what they have now. So people are going to go through another shift, another transformation, another time period that's going to be very energetically consuming as we're reasserting new routines, figuring out new things. So we're about to move through another time period of this where energy is just going to get zapped from people. And I'm afraid that most employers don't recognize that this is going to happen. We just think that it's just back to normal. But people are going to go through another difficult time period with this. So we have a tool or an approach that we use at Team Tipton, which is called the 3 levels of awareness. And this helps us to think about how to use our energy. So on level 1, this is when you recognize that your energy is getting consumed after the fact. So you've had a meeting or an interaction with someone, or you just did a work activity and you feel wiped out or agitated or frustrated or at your capacity. You recognize this after the fact. It's wonderful that you can acknowledge and recognize and know that this is happening. This is step 1 in being able to truly manage your energy, is recognizing and acknowledging that your energy has shifted. So once you acknowledge and are able to do that, the kind of step here is then to process it, to process or clear that energy. So processing can be done by journaling, by talking to a coach or a therapist, by interacting with a friend who can ask you reflective questions, not just a friend who's going to tell you you're right and yes, that person sucks, but someone who's going to ask you the questions to really help you to dig in and to think about what's occurred and to reflect on the situation. And then clearing is getting rid of that negative energy in some capacity. So meditation is a great way of clearing. Deep breathing is a way of clearing negative energy. Yoga practices, different ways of actually getting that negative energy or altered energy out of you. So then the next level of awareness is that you recognize that your energy is shifting in the moment. You can feel the anxiety building. You can feel the anger building when it's happening. So when you recognize this, you have a choice. You can kind of continue down that path and do things the way you've always done, or you can choose a different avenue. And that can be how you're showing up and how you're actually kind of the lens that you're looking through when you're seeing the other person and when you're interacting with them, shifting the way that you're feeling about it. It could be taking a pause, saying, you know what? I need a couple minutes to think about this, or I think it's a good idea if we stop the conversation now and return to this tomorrow at 9 a.m. I need some time to reflect. But some way of actually stopping the process from continuing and then grounding yourself in the moment. So physically grounding yourself by doing something like tapping or going for a walk or that deep breathing, because by getting into our physical bodies again, it helps to shift us out of that anxious state or the negative emotions that are starting to come up. And then the final level of awareness, level 3, is when you know it's going to be happening. You know it's going to be something that's energetically consuming, and so you can prepare for it. So I'll use my example of this workshop. For instance, I knew that this was something that I was going to be a little bit nervous before I came to talk to everybody. I was going to get those little butterflies. And so I made sure I didn't have any meetings before this. I made a cup of coffee. I hung out with my son. I looked over my notes. I prepared in advance for how I knew this energetic kind of time period was going to be. And then also, I get on a high after I talk with people. And so I haven't planned anything for the 30 minutes after this, because I know anybody who would talk to me wouldn't want to talk to me, because I'm going to talk 100 miles an hour and I'm going to tell you all the things. So I've planned around that. And that's the idea of it, is that you prepare yourself for what is going to come, and you plan your actual schedule, your work environment, the events you have before and the events you have after, to help to manage that energy use. So 3 key takeaways here are to practice agility to learn and improve, align around your purpose, and do that collaboratively with your team to help ensure that everybody's pointed in the same direction. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if you're having challenging conversations, step into that space. And then manage your energy for positive outcomes. The more we can start to recognize our energy consumption, we can start to plan for that and balance our activities through the course of the day, so that we are showing up as our best self to each one of those events and activities. All right, and now I'm going to pass it off to David with Namaste Solar. And as I said, we have 2 really different businesses. So I'm thrilled to hear how Namaste Solar has kind of approached this through the course of the last year.
Thank you, Audrey. There's a lot of really great information in your story and the PowerPoint slides. And I was a little intimidated by the quality of Audrey's PowerPoint slides, so I've decided to take a slightly different approach. And I'm going to kind of just tell you more of Namaste Solar's story of navigating COVID with risk, so I mitigate the risk of looking inadequate compared to Audrey's presentation. You know, we do have 2 very different companies in terms of what we focus on, but there's a lot of similarities in a lot of what Audrey presented and what they went through that really resonates strongly from my experience, and I'd say what a lot of people might share from Namaste Solar. One of the key differences for us had been, you know, we have a combination of people that work in the office and people that work in the field, and we have a high percentage of our people work in field roles, and we're a solar construction company. And so when the pandemic started, I remember, you know, it took us, it hit us pretty quickly, and we all had this kind of slow ramp up, and then suddenly it became very clear that this was going to be a big thing. We just didn't know how big. It was March 13th, I believe, of last year, and one of the first things that we did was we recognized that we're going to have some clearinghouse for information, some group of people that's going to be in charge of organizing and figuring this out. This was a big lift for us. This was going to be incredibly disruptive. We didn't know if we would still even be able to operate. You know, we have people working in the field. They're going into customers' homes. They're meeting with clients in person all the time. Working virtually wasn't, we had all the technology in place to be able to do that, but wasn't something that we had fully embraced. The transition to work from home was easy because of that technology, but we had a lot of infrastructure stuff that we didn't know what to do with. So the first thing we decided to do was the leadership team, which at the time, I guess, was comprised of 6 individuals that are our senior directors, myself, and Jason is our CEO. And we developed a task force that was specifically focused to COVID. And the first things that we talked about were, okay, well, we don't know a lot about what's going on. What do we need to do? What's our focus? How are we going to make decisions? That was one of the first things we talked about, is who's going to be responsible and how are decisions going to get made? And then what are the lenses with which we're going to use to make those decisions? So some of the very first conversations, we weren't even talking about solutions or figuring out the problems. We talked about how we were going to work and understanding how we were going to navigate this together. And I think that was a pretty crucial step for us. And we decided that all decisions could be made through CEO empowerment. We're a worker-owned cooperative. We're very transparent, we're very collaborative, and decision-making is often a confusing thing at Namaste Solar because of our culture. And so we decided it was important to get clear. However, even though we said CEO empowerment was going to be one of the paths for decision-making, we preferred that we would reach consensus through our task force, our company leadership. And I'm pretty proud to say that I can't think of one decision through our COVID task force response that ended up being a CEO decision. We managed to, as a group, come to all these group decisions and support decisions as an organization. And the second thing that we did was talked about the lenses with which we were going to make these decisions. And we decided that we had to really rely and use our core values. And not all the core values necessarily applied to all decisions, but there were some really key ones. And I think one of the things that really got us through this was our core value of distributed leadership, and then our other core value of safety, core value of long-term thinking. These were some things that really affected how we were going to decide things. And then stakeholder balancing was an incredibly important one. Who are we not thinking about? Who are we not considering? Who's going to be impacted by this decision? It was a long, arduous process to make some of these decisions, but they were very thoughtful and very, very thorough. And then we did practice transparency, but one of the things that was challenging for our organization is transparency is typically immediate. We recognized that there were likely going to be some operational impacts that were going to cause us to maybe not be able to have discussions in the fully transparent environment that we were accustomed to. For example, co-owners of our organization can call into our board of directors meetings. Employees at co-owners and candidates can call into a number of our other meetings. Our company leadership meeting every Tuesday is open to any co-owner and candidate. So we work out loud. However, some of the conversations that we needed to have, we were really nervous about people hearing partial pieces of information and then drawing conclusions, and then it creating fear. So we actually asked our board if they would allow us to use delayed transparency. And what that meant is we could have private conversations with closed doors, but we would communicate afterwards what happened, what we talked about, and what the results were. And so the board gave us a 30-day delayed transparency permission, and we communicated that to the organization. And so we spent a lot of time as a leadership team. We worked nights, weekends. There wasn't a day, I think there was a period where we worked roughly 45 days straight, trying to understand the changing landscape, whether or not we were going to be permitted to operate as a construction company. What are all the health and safety standards? It was very confusing and complex. We had to rewrite or write new policies, a whole bunch of them really quickly, and they needed to be effective. So there was a lot of stress, and we also recognized that we had to communicate regularly with the organization to try to mitigate fear. People were rightfully concerned. Do I have a job? Am I gonna be forced to work? Am I gonna be put in an unsafe situation? So one of the other things we did is we worked closely with our dedicated safety team, and we asked one of our safety team members to play a lead role and basically become our COVID response expert. We had to develop plans for what happens when people get exposed. What are we going to do for quarantines? You know, these are significant operational hiccups to an organization like ours. If one person on a crew of 3 is exposed, it doesn't mean that that crew can necessarily go out and do all the same work that they were going to do before. So huge operational hiccups. So we were able to have a lot of conversations, and one of the biggest decisions that we had to make was we weren't sure if we could continue to operate, if customer demand would still be there, if our current customers would want us to even work in their homes or on their project sites. So we made a very difficult decision, and we had to, it was pretty quickly after the pandemic started. I think it was the end of March last year. We had a decision that we were going to have to make layoffs, and we laid off 15% of our staff and furloughed another 15%. And leading up to that, we had an all company meeting, and our CEO, Jason, had a conversation with the whole company and said, this is what's going to happen. We're going to have to make some layoffs. We don't know who or exactly all of the ramifications. And our external board members and our internal board members were on the call. You know, almost 200 people joined that conversation. And the support that Jason was receiving in the chat from people about, you got this, we got your back, we know that this sucks, was phenomenal. And so I would say that our culture was a huge piece that helped us get through this, in addition to our core values. So we made some tough decisions, and we were very fortunate to get a PPP loan, which gave us a lot of confidence to start bringing some of those people back. We didn't go right back to the almost 200 people we were, but we were able to kind of slowly ramp up, and we started to recognize, we thought our lead volume would be decimated. It wasn't. It stayed about 80% of normal, and then kind of went back to where it used to be. Virtually none of our customers declined to have us do work. We were still making sales. We were like, holy smokes, I don't understand how this is happening. It was counterintuitive, but we decided to embrace it. And we decided to not make a lot of decisions based out of fear. We relied on our core values for all the decisions we were making. And some of them were really hard and painful, but we ended up having a really good year last year. And that's largely a result of some of the things that we did, but a huge part of it was our organizational culture. Being as transparent and having ownership, our success was based on every person's contribution in our organization. It wasn't just the leadership team. It wasn't safety team. It wasn't just operations. It was everybody coming together to provide a safe space to vent about how much this sucked. And then let's get to work and figure out how we're going to work through it. We also recognized the human component in it. And Jerry, who you can see on the call, she made a comment early on, like, we can't expect anybody to be at 100%. And a lot of the people at Namaste Solar expect themselves to be at 100%. So we had this problem of we had to continue to encourage people, look, if you show up at 85%, that's amazing. If you show up at 60%, that's amazing. Just keep showing up. We'll work with whatever you got. And tried to make it okay for people to be human, and try to make it okay for people to take time when they need to do things to keep their life in order. Life events didn't stop. People had family members pass away. People had babies. People were dealing with childcare and having children crawl all over them, barking dogs, you name it. The occasional embarrassing thing that might have happened on a phone call or two, you know, these were all realities in our world. And I think just trying to hear from the leadership team that it's okay. We're expecting, none of us, leadership is not showing up at 100% right now either. We're all in this marathon together. So we were very successful and fortunate in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of it's attributed to the people that we have in our organization, our core values, and our overall culture. And another thing that was tremendously valuable that Jerry actually had brought to the table was we established some services for our employees. We have a people-centric approach. That's something that we're really focused on. And so we recognized that we weren't medical experts. And we also recognized that our employees of our organization were going to look to us as the most reliable source of truth and how to navigate all this. That felt like a lot of pressure. Things were changing. We aren't medical people. So Jerry was able to connect with UC Health and that were offering services that we could then connect our employees. If they had symptoms or needed a test, they had a nurse triage line that our employees could call directly, and then they would help them get a appointment scheduled for testing. This really helped our operations significantly. We recognized our limitations and what we could handle internally and what we couldn't. And this service, while it was a little bumpy getting started, has proved to be quite valuable for us. And we still use it today. And then having our safety specialist, our safety coordinator, Emily Paulson, be the point of the spear in all things COVID. She's done a tremendous service to support all of our field teams. She's checked all the symptoms of every field employee every morning at 5:30 every day since the pandemic started. Any symptoms that get reported, we reviewed the task force reviews and makes recommendations for quarantine. If people come back positive, we have to address those things. And so it's a daily activity, but we found a good groove now. It's not as scary as it used to be. We're starting to see vaccines. And so we've been very fortunate. Namaste Solar had a good year in 2020. 2021 looks like a good year from a financial perspective, but the morale impact has been high and the hit to our culture has been high. The things that we're mostly struggling with right now are how to remain connected. We have a really creative group, and this is where our distributed leadership core value comes in. We have company meetings every quarter, and we've managed to find ways to make them kind of fun, even in the virtual environment. We've done talent shows, we've done skits, we laugh, we do check-ins, we've scheduled, these small groups with a 15-minute coffee meetup every couple of weeks. So you just get to meet with a group of people you don't normally get to work with, and it's like creating that experience in the kitchen where everybody's getting coffee and chats for a few minutes. We're recognizing that it can't be all work all the time. And then one of the other things that we discovered was we thought for sure the people working in the field were going to be hit the hardest from morale, from a morale perspective, feeling that they were exposed, they were on the front line, and they were in the least safe environment. So our leadership team was really, really worried about that. What we missed was the morale impact to everybody that was suddenly stuck working from home. So that was probably one of our bigger misses that we did eventually recognize, and we've taken steps to address. It just wasn't obvious to us from the get-go. But we organized lunch meetings with every one of our field crews. So our leadership team split up and went out and brought lunch to all of our field crews one day in the summer for each crew. And we discovered that their morale was actually pretty good. They were outside working. It was nice out. They were seeing the people that they work with. They had some in-person interactions. Then we were like, okay, well, that doesn't seem reflective of what people in the office were experiencing now that they're work from home. So we ended up recreating that in meeting with the office people, and we found parks, places that we could go and sit outside and bring them lunch and just talk and catch up. There wasn't any specific, we like to say, tell us anything. It's a free range conversation. And so that really helped. But there's only so much we can do in this virtual environment for a company that's completely connected in an in-person way. We really value spending time together. People go on vacations together. They hang out together. They mountain bike together. They have book clubs together. There's all kinds of different things that happen. And so that's our struggle right now, is how to really not let our culture be decimated by a lack of connectivity. Vaccines have some promise. We're hoping to get back together in person for some of our company meetings. Hopefully we'll be able to do a retreat this year. We've never gone a year without doing 2 retreats in our history, and we've now missed 3. And so that's a really, really painful thing for us. I'm realizing personally how much of a toll that takes, not connecting with the people that I love to work with. This is my tribe, and I need that energy from them. And it's hard when all you see of them is in 2D, but we've managed to keep it light. We've cried, we've stressed, we've supported each other. Our leadership team has cried, we've stressed, we've allowed to, one of the new core values that we have is come as you are. And we really want people to be authentic, be their authentic selves. And then lastly, I think one of the things that I think is helping us right now is we've also been fairly intentional in saying we can't let the business of the day suffer and just think about what sucks right now. So we're starting to do some things that are hopefully energizing us, inspiring us. We decided as a company that we haven't really done it before, but we're undertaking a 5-year vision project where we're actually creating a vision for Namaste Solar in 5 years. It's intended to be anybody that wants to contribute is welcome to. At almost 200 people, that presents certain challenges, but it's been really fun to integrate with every team and to have them be able to collaborate in a way that we haven't done before. And people are bringing up ideas and people are getting excited about things. So it's not all COVID all the time. We're turning our attention to what does it look like going forward? It's not going to be the same. That's okay. But we sure need to make it the best thing that we can. And we're really focused on making what Namaste Solar is the best version of itself that it can be. So I think all of those things have helped us, what I would say is be successful. We had very few positive COVID cases in our organization. We've had a lot of quarantines. We've been very conservative, but I have a lot of gratitude. It's because of every person in the organization doing their part. We couldn't have done it if that weren't the case. So that's our story.
I have a follow-up question for you, David. Of course. So you were talking about your new core values and taking on this visioning project, which resonates a lot with me. And the work that I do is often focused around collaborative strategy building, which is not often the approach. It happens, in leadership and is kind of trickled down to others. So my question here is, what made you decide to re-examine that at such a challenging time period, to step into that space courageously? And then with a 200-person company, how are you getting that collaborative input?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think personally, I was just feeling like I needed to find something joyful going forward. We talked about doing this work before the pandemic started, and it got completely put on hold. The end of last year took a personal toll on a lot of us. We were exhausted. We were worn down. I was far from my best. And I needed something that was going to energize me personally. And I started to suspect that other people might be feeling similarly. Talking about it with Jerry, talking about it with Jason, our leadership team, I started to get the sense that it was resonating with a lot of people, like, oh, it would be great to have something to be excited about. So that was happening in September, October. And then I was like, okay, well, be careful what you wish for, because now I don't know how we're going to do all this. This is a big lift if we're going to do it right and have it meaningful for Namaste Solar. So I spent a lot of time researching it and had a lot of brainstorming partners and people to bounce ideas off of. But I found a model with Zingerman's that I've mentioned to you before, Audrey. Zingerman's was a deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan that got started in the late 70s. And they've grown to be a collection of businesses. They call themselves a community of businesses now. And they do all kinds of different things. But one of the things that they offer is they have a website called Zing Train. And they have a lot of materials that just shares with the world openly. Here's what we do. Here's our philosophies on things. Here's how we've done things like leadership development and visioning. And I started sifting through all those materials and I said, wow, a lot of this really resonates for what I think could work for Namaste Solar. And so I spent about 2 or 3 months just immersed in visioning and learning about what felt like it would work for us, what wouldn't. There's tons of approaches and philosophies. There's no rights or wrongs. It's about what's a good fit. And so the leadership team, I presented to the leadership team and they were wholeheartedly endorsing, let's do this work. This sounds like something we need as a company. We have strategic plans, we have mission statements, but we don't have a good vision for, or the reality is we had 190 different visions. And so what we needed to do was align around a unifying vision. So we all felt like we were working in a similar direction. We've grown from, 100 people a few years ago to almost 200 people. We're scaled. We can't do things the same way that we were. And we need something that's our guiding light of how we want our strategic plan to support where we're going. And I think it felt like there really wasn't a choice at the end of the day. It felt like we had to do this and we had an obligation for the business to be successful. And not everybody's 100% on board. Not everybody sees the value in it, but I was very gratified that it was about 98% of the co-owners voted for us to do this work. And by Namaste Solar standards, that's a pretty landslide vote.
Absolutely.
I was wondering, Audrey, about how you all handled some of the uncertainty with your employees, knowing that there was going to be disruptions to your business and potentially a slowdown.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. And so it was hard conversations with people about what work would look like. We have both W-2 employees as well as 1099 contractors, but those 1099 contractors rely on us for the majority of their work. And so that was kind of the first area that we had to address, is helping them to understand what work would look like, the ebbs and flows of it, the roller coaster ride we were about to go through, and then being really flexible for people's schedules and trying to meet their needs. So we automatically went to people work whatever hours you need to. You can schedule with your clients on your own. You're autonomously responsible for your workload and your work environment. And then letting people know that they, we were here for them to let us know exactly what was going on, that transparency piece, and saying, like, I love the way that you described that, David, of, you might show up at 85% and that's awesome. You might show up at 60%. I don't think that we were that straightforward about it, but that was certainly the message we were trying to get across. So I really love that was your approach to it. We tried to do that as much as possible and struggled again with something very similar to you. Our employees want to do more than 100%. That's what normal is for them. And so it was hard to not be able to produce like that. People were really struggling. And so we did a lot of check-ins with people, weekly check-ins to talk about what's going on. How can I help you? What can I take from your plate? What can we not do? I think that was a lot of the conversation too. Like, what are the priorities and what do we not need to do? Let's just not do those things.
Yeah.
And everything seemed like a priority before. And then it was like, this doesn't align with our value. This isn't going to help us to move forward in this moment.
What's truly important right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is so hard because it all feels important.
And you're not at your best. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question for you. So one, I want to say to both of you, full respect for the approaches and the decisions that you made. As an outsider who kind of just admires both companies from afar, amazing. The
Thank
other thing I
you.
wanted to ask around visioning is kind of like how you communicate to each individual about when they're thinking about their vision for 5 years, like how are you kind of defining the parameters of what that looks like? Are they thinking about their particular role, or like the whole company? Like, because I'm in a place where we're working on a similar project, and I'm trying to figure out how to facilitate that and help people understand what that looks like.
Well, it's interesting. Some of the things I learned from Zingerman's, and they've inspired me along with some others. But we're focused right now on an organizational vision, and then it's also kind of organically evolved into some of the teams have now asked for support in developing a team vision. And I'm even working with some individuals on their personal vision. And so it's kind of organically growing, and it's somehow now becoming, I am far from a vision expert, but I might be the vision expert at Namaste Solar, which might be alarming for everyone involved. But I think what I've discovered is there's a way to just do some exercises, and starting with brainstorming, and then starting to take those brainstorming. And I've been using a virtual whiteboard with our teams, and just letting it be a free form. Okay, the structure I put into place is like, let's think about the company level right now. What are images of success that you see 5 years out for Namaste Solar? And don't constrain yourself with preconceived notions of what the organization will or won't do. And also don't get too pie in the sky. Like, we want it to be aspirational, we want it to be inspirational, but it also needs to be strategically viable. And so the process that we've been using is really modeled after Zingerman's approach, but you basically get a group of people together, you do a brainstorming session of those future images of success. The group then works to organize each one of those things into themes, and you develop different themes. And then what you do is you get some volunteers to start the drafting process, and you take all those themes and those images and start writing a vision. And the way we're writing it is we're writing it in the present future tense. So what's 5 years from now? Is it 2021? So it's 2026, and here's what Namaste Solar looks like. Here's our landscape, and it's very rich in detail. And you describe enough of it to the point that when you've arrived at that, accomplishing those things. But it's not a strategic plan. It's not addressing the how of everything. It's more of a descriptive picture of the future. And so we've been doing this exercise with people at the company level, at the individual level, as well as at the team level. And we're not through it yet. I don't know. This is an experiment for us. But so far, the brainstorming sessions have been a lot of fun. There's been a lot of creativity. It's really engaging, and it really fosters a lot of that connectivity. And I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's how we've been trying to be inclusive and hear from everybody in the organization, and then rely on them to say, if you want help with the personal vision, I'm there for you. I can help coach you through that. But the intention right now has been focused on the company level, and everything else has been kind of happening organically.
And Danny, can I just add one thing to that? I know we have to wrap up, but just really, really fast. So I agree with absolutely everything David has said. We use human-centered design tools to help us to really ground ourselves in the empathy of who we're trying to serve and what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And then we do that unrestrained brainstorming, which helps to catalyze thoughts. When you're not evaluating as you're brainstorming, it actually helps to trigger other kind of ideas and neural pathways that wouldn't connect otherwise. And so we start there and then do similarly to what David said of really thinking through the themes. And so it's a process of empathizing, brainstorming, and then prototyping the work, and then using that iterative cycle of improvement to get better and better at that kind of final product overall. And then the other thing I wanted to say in terms of kind of that visioning process is we also like to start high level with the company and really focus on why you're doing it first, then what you're going to do before you ever get to the how. The tactical details, if we get lost there, we miss the strategic imperatives that are going to help to drive the decision making and drive the work later.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I could talk about this with you all day, Audrey.
I know, and we will.
But Shannon, like if you want to meet offline, I'd be happy to just share with you what our experiences are. I can't say what'll work best for somebody else. I can share with you what we're doing and how it's working for us.
Well, yeah, when you guys talk all day, you should just record it and post it as a podcast, and then all of your admirers can listen. Specifically, like how Namaste, how you guys are valuing group decision making is pretty amazing. We're in the process of kind of structuring ours to be more of a public benefit corporation that also,
Nice.
or public benefit company that is also trying to really articulate these values. So
That's awesome.
you're our Zingermans.
Yeah, the website is actually Zing Train, and there's all kinds of resources on there. And Ari, who is one of the original founders, does a lot of podcasts and blogs, and there's just really amazing insights offered.
Cool. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you all so much. I'm so sorry to cut off the conversation. It's always my least favorite part about doing events, but I do want to respect everyone's time. So again, just thank you so much to Audrey and David for your time and your expertise and just like sharing, what you went through and, kind of making us all feel like we're not crazy for, the things that we went through, which is always wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having us. It was really fun. And like I said, you could have hosted a 3-hour version and I would have loved it.
I mean, don't tempt me. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming. We have a couple of survey questions that we would love for you to fill out as you head out. It takes like 30 seconds. There's only 4 questions and we use this feedback to provide better and better events. And I would like to give a plug for our next Best for Colorado Coffee Chat. So today's event was focused on the retrospective view of COVID. So we would like to invite you to join our next coffee chat on May 21st for a forward focus perspective and how businesses have permanently adapted due to COVID. And again, thank you all so much for being here. Again, thank you so much, David and Audrey, and we hope to see you all at our next event.
Happy Friday.
Thank you. Bye.